Mr. Miller, you're so poor you can't work, but 2 months ago, you were a successful restaurant and homeowner? What happened? Did you have an unfortunate accident where you accidentally dropped all your assets into your other son's pocket? This isn't a lawsuit. This is a scam. You're not just a bad father, you're a bad con artist.
Today, a successful entrepreneur is being sued for support by the very father who abandoned him. Is this a case about family duty, or is it a shameless shakedown? The plaintiff is Mr. Frank Miller, a man in his 60s deliberately dressed in shabby clothes, feigning frailty. The defendant is Daniel Miller, his son, a successful young man in a tailored suit. He carries himself with a calm demeanor, but you can't miss the pain and deep-seated contempt in his eyes. Judge Carter begins, her voice devoid of emotion. Mr. Miller, you are suing your son for monthly support in the amount of $5,000. Proceed. Frank begins his performance, his voice trembling and full of remorse, his eyes welling up. Your Honor, I made a terrible mistake. I was young. I was foolish and selfish for leaving my family. I have regretted it every day, every hour for the last 20 years. He lets out a dry cough, clutching his back. But now, I'm old. My health is failing. My back is in such pain that I can no longer work. I'm getting by on stale bread. He presents a crumpled doctor's note. I have nothing left. My son, my Daniel, he lives in a mansion and drives fancy cars while I struggle to pay rent for a damp little room. I'm not asking for his wealth. I'm just asking for a little help from my own flesh and blood. Daniel's son, I know you're there. I'm just asking for a little compassion. Judge Carter listens, her expression unchanged. Sounds like a romance novel, Mr. Miller. Unfortunately, I don't pay for fiction. I pay for facts. In those 20 years you were so heartbroken, how many child support checks were sent? I want a number. Don't tell me you had it rough. Frank freezes. Well, Your Honor, at the time, I didn't ask if you had it rough. The judge cuts in, her voice like ice. I asked how many, 1 or 0? 0, Your Honor. How many birthday cards? How many phone calls? The judge continues, her voice sharp as a razor. You said you were proud to see him in a magazine. Was that the first time you found out how your son was doing? Cornered, Frank falls silent. The judge turns to Daniel. Mr. Miller, your turn. Daniel stands, his voice calm, but every word is heavy as lead. Your Honor, my mother had to work 2, sometimes 3 jobs just to keep a roof over our heads. I remember nights when our power was cut because we couldn't pay the bill. I remember my mother skipping dinner so that I could have a full meal. I remember our car breaking down in the rain, and my mother and I had to walk nearly 3 miles to get home. He takes a deep breath, his voice beginning to tremble with suppressed emotion. That hardship wore her down. The year I turned 18, the age I should have been starting my own life in college, my mother fell ill. She overworked herself to the point of having a stroke, which left her partially paralyzed. The entire burden fell on my shoulders. I had to work part-time jobs to cover her medical bills while taking care of her. Where was this pride he speaks of during the nights I stayed awake by my mother's bedside? Where was it when I had to give up my own dreams to carry a responsibility that should have been his?
He's lying!
Frank shouts. I didn't know anything about that. Daniel snaps his head towards him. How could you? You weren't there. He turns back to the judge. I don't object to filial duty, but this is a shameless demand. I hired a private investigator, and what we found paints a very different picture. Daniel places a file on the table, and a series of photos flash on the screen. This is Mr. Frank Miller at a hardware store 3 weeks ago, carrying a heavy bag of soil. Judge Carter raises an eyebrow. Mr. Miller, That failing back of yours seems to work just fine at the hardware store. Was that bag of soil filled with feathers? Answer me. Frank turns pale. I was just helping a friend. Helping a friend or helping your new family? Daniel asks coldly, switching to the next piece of evidence, a screenshot from social media. Frank is standing with a woman and a boy of about 18 in front of a nice house. The caption reads, "My husband Frank is the best. Just closed the deal on the restaurant and treated our son Michael to his first car. Father of the year right here." The act has completely fallen apart. That's my new family. Frank stammers. We're struggling, too. Struggling so much that you're giving away assets. Judge Carter asks, as Daniel delivers the final blow official land deeds. Your Honor, this is a property transfer agreement signed 2 months before this lawsuit was filed. It shows that Mr. Frank Miller transferred full ownership of that house and a restaurant called Saigon Bistro to his other son, Michael Miller. The truth was crystal clear. He had deliberately made himself penniless on paper to legally sue the son he had abandoned for money. Judge Carter looks at Frank with pure disgust.
Mr. Miller, you're so poor you can't work, but 2 months ago, you were a successful restaurant and homeowner? What happened? Did you have an unfortunate accident where you accidentally dropped all your assets into your other son's pocket? This isn't a lawsuit. This is a scam. You're not just a bad father, you're a bad con artist.
Parenthood isn't a name on a birth certificate you can cash in 20 years later. It's a job. You don't show up for the job, you don't get the paycheck. You don't pay into the plan, you don't get the pension. It's that simple. What do you think this is, a charity? She bangs her gavel. Your lawsuit is dismissed, and I am ordering you to pay the defendants full legal costs. Now get out of my courtroom. Before I decide a prison jumpsuit would suit you better than that outfit. The childhood debt was never paid, and the filial debt was denied. The case is closed, but it's a stark reminder family is about presence, about responsibility, not a blank check you can cash after a 20-year absence. Today, in this courtroom, truth and dignity had the final, powerful word.